Hi everyone, I'm George Verhoeven. Welcome back to the TheJaxLeft channel. Today begins a special series about Jacksonville's consolidated government. I'm looking back at the development of this unique local government that we have here in Jacksonville. I'm looking at what the past was behind it and also what is going on today, as well as what the possibilities are for tomorrow. Why am I doing this special series now in November 2013? Well, there's a special task force that was assembled by the Jacksonville City Council this past summer, and they are meeting ongoing up until April 2014 to determine what recommendations they're going to make at the City Council to possibly make changes to our existing governmental structure. You know, a lot of decisions get made. Decisions get made about taxation, property, development, our future, our health, various things having to do with our social welfare. And all these decisions get made, you know, they get made downtown. But things were different right after World War II. You know, the river at one point really was wharves, ships, and was essentially a port of call. And so now, of course, we have this hotel here, and we have what then was the current City Hall. Now it's the old City Hall. We have the bank skyscrapers, and we have the Main Street Bridge that was built in 1941. And as you can see, it's dotted with skyscrapers. What is now the Aetna building, which used to then, which was opened up in the early 50s as the Prudential building, that basically was one of the first riverfront office buildings. And then, of course, later came all this other development, the Gulf Life building, what was then the Gulf Life building, what was then the Jacksonville Hilton. All this development occurred starting in the late 1950s and then on into the 1960s. So Jacksonville was growing. Jacksonville was growing outward also. It was growing into Arlington. For example, you can see in the distance the Hart Bridge. Hart Bridge was built in 1967. The Matthews Bridge to Arlington was built in 1953. So all of these bridges were built, and people began to leave downtown Jacksonville. And the city of Jacksonville, the government of the city of Jacksonville, was basically, was essentially downtown with some older neighborhoods. The annexation attempts to bring the outer suburbs, at that time the outer suburbs, were actually rejected by voters in the early 1960s. People were leaving downtown Jacksonville for the suburbs. And so the tax revenue of what was the old city of Jacksonville was declining. People out in the county were demanding services, sidewalks, better schools, safe, clean drinking water, and the kinds of things that the county government seemed reluctant to provide. Later on, people began to find out that there was a lot of corruption in the county and city government. And it was interesting because the city government itself had a city council, it had a city commission, and the county government had a board of county commissioners. So there were a lot of different politicians, and there was a lot of corruption going on. In a short span, in the 1960s, there were 11 indictments of public officials, 4 of the 9 city councilmen, 2 of the 5 city commissioners. The commissioners were the people who actually administered the government. There wasn't even a strong mayor. It was a very weak ceremonial mayor, so there wasn't a lot of leadership in the city government. Then, and also 1 of 5 county commissioners was indicted. So there were a lot of people that were indicted, and there's also problems with declining property values in downtown, and then also there were issues with property value going up out in the suburbs. But the taxes, the land values were being kept artificially low. In fact, I believe it was the 1964 tax bill had to be reconfigured. It was ordered by a judge because the tax assessor had been valuing the properties, the property appraiser had been valuing the properties artificially low, probably for some political reasons. So there's all of this going on, and so with all this happening, all this duplication of services, and all these pressures upon the city government and the county government, and the pressures that the government was unwilling to respond to, and was kind of intertwined and mired in the good old boy network in Jacksonville, that finally was beginning to be the last straw. Business leaders were getting concerned, citizens were being concerned, and you know, people wanted to see Jacksonville grow and prosper. And so something happened. there was a man named Claude Yates, and he was fed up. And then there was something that happened that really caused him, along with other business and civic leaders, to make a decision that something had to change. And so let's go to another area of downtown Jacksonville that has some historic value to it. I'll see you in just a second. On the site of what is now today the federal courthouse, there was a hotel called the Robert Mayer Hotel, and it was built in 1959. The slogan when the hotel opened was just in time for 59. It was a modern hotel for its time, and it was in a unique, in what is even today a special location in that, well, of course today we have the automated Skyway Express, which wasn't there at the time, and also we have what was at the time Hemming Park. Now it's called Hemming Plaza. The Independent Life and the Barnett, well, now what was called the Barnett Bank Building and is now called the Bank of America Building. Those skyscrapers weren't there. The public library wasn't there, and what is now our Jacksonville City Hall was at the time a department store. So what's truly amazing is that something unique happened at this hotel that's no longer in existence, that's long gone. It was bulldozed in the 1990s. It closed in the 1970s and was reopened briefly in the 80s. Now replaced, of course, by this modern federal courthouse. What was unique was that something special happened in our the history of our the formation of our what's now our consolidated government. In 1964, the Duval County Public High Schools, all 15 of the Duval County Public High Schools, were disaccredited. This is a big thing, and this caught the attention of a businessman who was a vice president and general manager at what was then called Southern Bell. He decided that something had to be done. He was in the Chamber of Commerce, and so on January the 19th, 1965, he called a meeting, and various businessmen, you may recognize some of the names, especially if you drive on Interstate 10, men named Lane, Stockton, maybe you bought a Chevy from Nimnet Chevrolet. These men, along with Yates and other people, including a general, gathered, and they put together a request to the Florida legislature. And this request, which is interesting because it was important that the request was made quickly because time was of the essence. Back in the 1960s, before changes were made in our state constitution, the Florida state legislature only met once every 2 years, and they met for 60 days. And so he, along with the others, put together a request to the state legislature, and it was called, later became called the Yates Manifesto. And it was a request that was given to the to State Representative Fred Schultz and State Senator John E. Matthews Jr. And so at that meeting, these business and civic leaders of Jacksonville put together an elegantly simple request. The request was this: we, the undersigned, respectfully request the Duval County delegation to the Florida legislature to prepare an enabling act calling for the citizens of Duval County to vote on the consolidation of government within Duval County to secure more efficient and effective government under one governmental body. So they put together this basic request, and so now we're in 1965, January of 1965, and now let's look in our next special at what the legislature does and what the results of this request are. There's a lot that's happening at this point in history, and a point has been reached. So we'll see in our next special in this continuing series about consolidation. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to the TheJaxLeft channel for part 2 of Jacksonville Consolidation, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, a History Jacksonville special.